of our radio friends. And your blessing.
This is a
The weightier matters. You go deep down into the soul where you can share yourself. And sharing yourself is not just about the joys, but also the sorrows, about the pleasantries, but also about the challenges. And so individuals may have a challenge opening up to that kind of reality.
Correct, yeah.
And it becomes easy for them to laugh and chat when friends are around. But when the two of them are driving to church for half an hour, 45 minutes, an
pure
hour,
silence.
it's just pure silence.
Well, interestingly, though, Doc, again, we talk about, practicing communication and practicing to address issues, making a habit of talking with your spouse, because I think the more you do it is the better you get at it. The ability to resolve conflicts as well, and to be able to deal with very heavy matters without all of necessarily the emotional burden and weight that comes along with it. I think it's really imperative, Pastor, for persons to practice communicating, so that when the difficult issues need to be discussed, that you can do it, you can do it well. I think that's important. People are afraid of having heavy conversations because they generally feel that it's not going to go well. And so they avoid it, and they prefer to deal with the superficial stuff, to laugh with friends, to go out and get some drinks, to talk about football, sports, or to talk about, the latest TV show, as opposed to dealing with important matters that can make or break a relationship.
Now we say often on this program that communication, proper, good communication, has to be learned.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. You are not born as excellent communicators. You have to learn good communication. And sometimes, based on where your relationship is and the level and comfort you have relating to each other on the deeper issues, you may need some help.
Yes.
You may need some professional help. You may need a counselor to put you there and for you to literally practice. And sometimes, in a counseling setting, you can see the discomfort when you have people engage in this kind of exercise. And I've had people say, when we started, it was clumsy, it wasn't going well, but we're now getting a hang of it, and it's helping us so much.
Correct.
And that's the idea.
Yeah, it is the idea, because it's something that you need to learn to do over a period of time. Yeah.
Now some persons too, you mentioned just now, Doc, that individuals may sometimes have the fear that it will not go well. We may end up in an argument because every time we go to discuss something, it's an argument. Because one person may want to have their way. And sometimes we learn things from our parents, our home. We watch how our parents relate, and we pick that up as the correct thing to do, so to speak. This is our reality.
Yeah.
And when you get married, you tend to have no other reference point, and you take that pattern of communication, which may be really very bad. And so you may have to leave that alone and learn the proper system. So as soon as somebody opposes you or say, I have a different perspective, you put up a defense, because that's what you're accustomed to.
Right, and that's what you've been taught inevitably, not in a classroom setting, but just within the context of your home.
Yes.
You learned that, you picked it up, and that's what you practice. And again, we do need to unlearn some things, Doc. As you sit down and I spoke to some persons recently and said, listen, there are a lot of things that you learned at home that are not best practices, and you've been doing them over the years with not so great results. And what you need to do now is to learn how to do this well, and particularly in the realm of communication.
But there are lots of people out there who may be saying, you want to tell me you're going to teach me how to communicate? And it sounds as though you want to manage my life. Yeah. But we want you to give attention to what we're saying. Because, and the truth is, if you are experiencing the challenges that we're talking about, where when your friends are around, you're laughing and you're talking, but when they're not there, it's this boring kind of thing, you can't relate to one another. It may very well be that you need to get somebody to provide the assistance that you need in coaching you to be able to communicate effectively.
What you stated a while ago about somebody sitting down and saying, wait, you need to sort of teach me how to communicate. It's one of the myths of communication, that we are all good communicators. Because you're an adult, automatically you're a good communicator, and that is not the case. Communication takes practice, and you have to learn how to do it well. Sometimes some persons have in their early years not been very good communicators, maybe into their late teens, early 20s, and they've carried that practice through to their 30s, 40s, and 50s into the relationship. The same things. You think that because you can carry a message, as we would say in Antigua, maybe you can go to the store and you can pick up what you want and you can have a conversation with people at work. That does not make you a great communicator.
So, friends, we want you to pay attention to that, but we want to identify another area where friends may be a challenge. And what we are saying is, if you recognize that your spouse seems more comfortable with friends than with you, could be a communication problem, but it could be something else,
Yes,
Doc.
yes.
It could very well be that the relationship is being impacted because there is hurt
Yes.
in the marriage.
Yeah, very much so.
You know, your spouse may have experienced maybe rejection, criticism, and the spouse is feeling more comfortable with friends because maybe you don't like how your spouse laughs, and every time your spouse laughs around you, you say, "Who laugh like that?" You know, where you learn to laugh, and so it's they get uncomfortable with it,
Yeah.
and say, my friends don't complain about this.
Right, and we could use so many different illustrations to express this whole notion of hurt in the marriage. You share something with your spouse, Doc, and maybe something sensitive, maybe embarrassing even, but you had the courage to tell your spouse, your wife, such and such happened, and within the week or early next week, it's been thrown back in your face. I can't believe that happened to you, or I can't believe you did that. And it's laughing, and you feel hurt by the fact that they would have used maybe that sensitive information back on you. Maybe I like to use the example of maybe a husband who speaks about his early childhood to his spouse and says that the reason why he has difficulties dealing with persons in authority is because his father was the kind of person who really criticized him a lot and called him out, called him down, said he was not going to become anything. And that's why this husband might be struggling with self-actualization, just cannot seem to push or move himself. His wife would say, I always have to kind of tell you what to do. And he opens up and says, look, when I think back, this is my story. I cried so many times and so on. And then, in a week, this time he doesn't do something that the wife may have asked, and she said, no wonder. You know what, you're just not self-actualized. You didn't grow up right. You were a mess as a child. That person is not going to want to trust his spouse any longer with sensitive information, but may share that information with some other friends and get much more support. And as a result of that hurt, he now finds more comfort in sharing with friends than with his spouse. Yeah.
I think, the home environment, the atmosphere has to be right. If one spouse speaks down to the other, where you have the situation where this person sets himself or herself up as the authority figure, as the one who knows how to do it right, and the other person never gets it right, that environment becomes very uncomfortable. And before long, your partner may think, I don't want to be around you. I don't enjoy your presence. So let me hang out with my friends. And you will hear the complaint, when you're on the phone with your friends, you're laughing and chatting, but when you're with me, there's nothing. So that may be reflective of the fact that your partner is hurting, and you may be contributing to that hurt.
Yeah. Very powerful. I think that's a very powerful point. But we continue. We looked at superficiality. We looked at hurt in the marriage as a reason why your spouse may be investing more time with friends. Another reason, Doc, could be what we consider to be the rejection of a spouse. And you may, as a spouse, recognize that your spouse, well, as a husband, you may recognize that your wife is not perfect. And so you kind of give up on the person. You kind of, it's been 10 years now, I've been trying with this person and they're just not getting it. So, your attitude, your whole demeanor speaks to, giving up. You're just not making any efforts any longer. And so that spouse may now seek to invest in other friendships, maybe feeling the sense that, my spouse, he just has given up on me.
Now this, Doc, is very serious, but also very common. And so I think we need to speak to it just a little more. An individual may say, I'm not investing in this relationship anymore, because effectively you're saying it's hopeless.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
I will remain married.
Right.
I will support the family. I'll be here for the children.
Right.
I'll talk with you. We could even be friends.
Right,
We
but
can, but I am not. I'm not
I'm not
bothering
here.
anymore.
I'm not
No,
really here. Yeah.
I'm not here. I checked out.
Yeah.
Right? I checked out. So the individual resigns himself or herself to live in a separate life. I'm going to seek satisfaction, emotional comfort, and support elsewhere.
Right.
So I have some friends, and this may not necessarily be any unfaithful relationship, but I have some friends. I'm going to hang out with them, whether you're playing sports or you're just chatting, or they may even engage in some community outreach project, and you find fulfillment there. And so, if that is your situation, this is an indication that something is wrong with the marriage. And I want to speak to the individual who recognizes that your spouse is absent, has checked out. So there are two persons. One has done the checking out.
Right.
The other one is there saying, I don't know what's wrong with my marriage.
Correct.
Please get help. Either way, get help.
Yeah. You may also be dealing with, and the one who has checked out may be dealing with issues of perfectionism. Maybe, your expectations are just way too high. You anticipated that the relationship would have brought you X, Y, and Z. It's not fulfilling what you had in mind, and so you're checking out, you're moving on. But if you give somebody an opportunity to be involved as a counselor, they will help you to understand that what you anticipated and what you expected is not realistic, and so you giving up on the person is really not a fair action. But you should really take the opportunity to examine your own expectations and maybe address those so that the relationship can be successful.
And this is the value in getting counseling.
Yes.
Because, we ask questions. A lot of people have misconceptions about what counseling is.
Very true.
So it is important just to say that counseling is not somebody telling you what to do. A lot of times, people have in themselves what is necessary. They just don't know how.
Right.
So when you ask an individual, how have you contributed to this? You have checked out. Now, have you stopped to think about what your contribution to the issue might be?
Right.
It may just give them an opportunity to reflect.
Right.
So counseling, I think I heard you whispering, Doc, may be just unlocking some areas, empowering you to deal with the situation.
Correct.
And the idea is you do the work, you get on it. The counselor is a facilitator, is a guide to get you on the right road. Because if you're lost, you need somebody to show you the right path, But showing the right path will not solve the situation unless you're willing to walk it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very true. So again, another critical area, that of rejection, and we looked at it from both sides. And I think that, in any given relationship, if you are experiencing that sort of a scenario where you have an intruder of friends, looking at, the whole idea of rejection, and whether or not you may be guilty of rejecting your spouse could help to begin to alleviate that issue.
Certainly.
Okay.
Now, Doc, I like the other one that I'm going to just share now. Again, this is also weighty. The matter of divulging secrets.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So an individual may say, listen, I said certain things to my spouse, and my spouse told his best friend or her best friend.
Right.
And I feel violated because that is supposed to be information between the two of us, right? So sharing secrets with friends can be a challenge. Now, one person may think this is not a big deal, and that can create a challenge where the other party might say, I'm not going to open up because my wife or husband doesn't seem to know what boundaries are in this regard.
Right. Yeah. This is a pretty big area because, again, sometimes persons of the opinion that if I tell you something that should be held in strict confidence, as a spouse, you kind of have that anticipation. This is the person that you confide in, and if this person is taking that information, having, sharing it with others or having secret phone calls or conversations with friends about stuff that you've shared, it can be quite problematic. I think, in some instances, Doc, if the relationship is a deep relationship, you often able to withstand some of those challenges. Again, it's so imperative to build strong relationships, because sharing information in the context of a weak conversation of a weak relationship, can be very detrimental.
No, I think one of the challenges here, your husbands and wives ought not to have secrets from one another.
Correct, yeah.
But when one person feels that the other person is not going to be confidential, then they may decide, I'm going to do this on my own.
Right,
So let me hold my things to myself. And then it becomes a challenge because what we have now is lack of transparency.
Absolutely.
You're not open enough. And so we go back to the Garden of Eden situation. They were both naked and ashamed, which is true intimacy. And when true intimacy is not present in the relationship, it creates a challenge.
Hence, again, this discussion about communicating and being honest.
Yes.
Assertive is the big word that we use in communication. Being able to say what's on your heart and what's on your mind and not being afraid to say it because you feel like you're going to hurt the other person. I mean, we're not saying to be rude and obnoxious, but we are saying that if your spouse was selfish today, when you asked him to come and collect you because you needed some assistance to do something and the person refused or made an excuse as to why they couldn't come, and that bothered you, at least within the next 24 hours, you should be able to raise that as an issue and say to the person, I really felt hurt today. I felt hurt that you could not have accommodated me. And you may even say concerning other times that you may have put yourself out. But the point is, if you don't address the issue, it's gonna develop into something bigger.
I think this is just a good example of iMessages that you shared there, because you didn't say you hurt my feelings,
right?
But I felt hurt. By the behavior, and I want our listeners and viewers to capture this, because it has been a challenge to many individuals, because one person blames the other. Again, we're saying that you are responsible for your feelings, but you have the right to be hurt.
Yes.
You have the right to be upset over particular behavior that was not kosher, so to speak.
Yes.
But how you communicate that, how you communicate your feelings, if you say, you're always late,
Right.
immediately your partner gets in the defensive,
That's
correct,
correct,
and there's a little drawback, a little pushback. But when you say it the way you said it, I felt hurt today when you arrived late. And you can go on to explain. You are taking ownership of your feeling.
Right.
You're not blaming the individual anymore. And it becomes so much easier for your partner to say, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Right.
But if when you meet them, your face tells a story before you talk back, you come in the car, you sit down, you're facing another way, and and then you're always late and you're this and you're that. Your partner immediately gets on the defensive, and you don't have atmosphere that lends towards an easy apology.
So if we consider our conversation, time is almost up, Doc. But we're talking about intruders, and this particular intruder is the intruder of friends. And we're saying that there can be several instances where the intruder of friends is as a result of something else that is happening in the relationship.
Exactly.
And that's what we need to examine. In the last case, it's about secrets. Your spouse not feeling that maybe you handle secrets well, so they revert to telling somebody else. And so you have to ask yourself the question, at what level we need to have a conversation about what we consider to be confidential stuff, so that we don't end up hurting the other person. And don't take it for granted, because some people say, oh, you're overly sensitive. But the truth is, a person may have had issues in the past, and that might be just an area of their life that they struggle with.
Yes, certainly. So again, friends, if you realize that friends is a problem in the relationship, it may be reflective of some deeper issues.
Yes.
And we're challenging you to look at them, work on them. That's all the time we have for today. We wish you God's blessings and God's peace. Marriage Encounter continues next week. Until then, we encourage you to drop us a line. Let us know how meaningful the program has been to you. Or mailing address, email, that is marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. That is marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. Until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.
You're listening to Second Advent Radio 101.5